All right, what if you could take a text that's over 1,400 years old and break it down with like Minority Report style precision? Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're taking one single incredibly powerful verse from the Quran and deconstructing it, word by word, to see all the layers of meaning packed inside. Okay, so here's the verse we're diving into. It starts off by painting this really vivid picture of the people who were with the Prophet Muhammad. And you'll see it's not just a boring list of adjectives. No, it's this dynamic portrait of a whole community. And it's defined by these two key things: how they deal with the world outside and how they treat each other on the inside. Now, the source we're drawing from for this breakdown has this awesome, almost sci-fi way of looking at the original Arabic. We're going to borrow that same method, pulling apart each keyword to really get the full picture. So first up, let's talk about the duality of their character. So yeah, the very first thing this verse points out is this really fascinating contrast in their character. It's like two sides of the same coin, two traits that seem almost opposite, but together, they define what a believer is. Okay, the first word we see is ashidao. This translates to being strong, firm, even intense. But, and this is the key detail, it's not just about being a tough person in general. The verse makes it super clear this strength is directed outward. It's about being firm in your stance against disbelief. And then bam, right after that, the verse immediately balances that intensity with the very next word, ruhama'u. This means merciful, compassionate, kind. And what's really amazing here is that the root of this word in Arabic is related to the word for womb. So it's not just regular kindness. It implies this super deep, protective, nurturing kind of mercy. So you see the contrast, right? That's the whole point. It's not about being either tough or kind. It's about being both at the same time. You've got this firm, unshakable conviction when it comes to your principles, but then you pair that with this deep, profound gentleness and mercy for the people in your own community. Okay, so we've got the internal character down, but how does that actually look on the outside? Well, the next part of the verse shows us exactly how these traits turn into real physical acts of worship. And this is where the verse gets super visual. It says, tarahum, which literally means you see them. It's like we right now are watching this scene play out. And what do we see? We see them constantly in the core postures of prayer. Rukkaren, which is bowing, and sujjadan, which is prostrating. The way it's phrased makes it clear this isn't something they just do once in a while. It's their constant state. So why? Why are they always in this state of worship? The verse tells us it's because they are yabtorona, and that word means they are actively seeking something. They're pursuing it, they want it. This is the engine, the motivation behind everything they're doing physically. Okay, and this is where it gets really, really interesting. This classical Arabic word for seeking actually opens up this surprising little window into our world right now. It turns out that the simple phrase "I want" is expressed in tons of different ways across the Arabic-speaking world today. So if you're in the Levant or Egypt or Sudan, the words they use for "I want" all come from totally different linguistic roots. But check this out. In the Gulf region, the everyday colloquial word they use is abra. And guess what? It comes from the exact same classical root as yabtaguna that we just saw in the verse. How wild is that? It's like this little linguistic echo that survived for more than 1,400 years. So what are they seeking so badly? What do they want? The verse nails down two specific things. First, fadlan, which is bounty from God. But then there's the second thing, and this is arguably even more important. They're seeking ridwanan, his contentment, his pleasure. So you see, it's not just about getting stuff. It's about reaching this state where God is pleased with you. All right, next up, the verse describes a sign, something you can actually see, that comes from all this internal character and all this external worship. The verse says, "Simahum fi wujuhihim," which basically means their sign is on their faces. And then it tells us that this sign comes from the trace of prostration, which begs the question, right? What exactly is that trace? Now, a lot of people might think this is talking about that physical prayer mark, the callus some people get on their forehead from prostrating so much. But the source we're looking at makes a really important distinction. The interpretation it gives isn't about a physical mark at all. It's about a nur, a kind of spiritual light, a light of piety and obedience that just shines from a person's face, from the inside out. And our source uses a really blunt but powerful example to make this point crystal clear. I mean, as it says here, you can find people who have that physical mark on their forehead, but they're some of the worst people around. It just hammers home the idea that the real sign isn't something you can fake. It's a spiritual glow that only comes from true submission, not from just going through the motions. Okay, to wrap things up, the verse does something pretty amazing. It takes this whole detailed picture of a believer that we've just unpacked and zooms out, placing it into a much bigger historical story. So here's what it does. It takes this entire description we've been talking about, the strength, the mercy, the constant worship, seeking God's pleasure, and it says, hey, by the way, this isn't some brand new idea. It says this very same example of a believer is found in the previous scriptures, and it even specifically mentions the Torah and the Gospel, or the Injil. And that leaves us with one final, really thought-provoking question, which comes straight from the source itself. You see, by connecting this description to revelations that came before, the verse is hinting that this is a timeless, universal portrait of a true believer. But what exactly did those other scriptures say about them? Now that's a question that really makes you want to dig a whole lot deeper.